Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Rack Show. I am your host today. Excuse me, Frank Horvath. Joining in the studio is Tim Kelly. Tim, say hi.
Hey, everyone.
All right. So we have an exciting new show for you guys. We're going to be talking about all things self-defense, right?
Yep.
Personal self-defense for your family, things to think about, things to consider. Really, we want to help educate our community, and one of the avenues we're going to be doing that is through radio, right? Through the radio waves.
Right.
All right. So, with this being our first show, introduction should be key. So again, my name is Frank Horvath. I'm a firearms instructor with Apache Solutions. Have a number of years of training under my belt from several firearms reputable instructors. Tom Givens being one of them. I'm a range master, master certified instructor. I hold competencies from North Carolina Department of Justice. Hold a number of instructor ratings from the NRA and several several different disciplines. Tim Kelly's here in the studio joining me. Tim, talk a little bit about yourself.
All right. So my name is Tim Kelly. I'm the owner of Apache. I started this business back in 2017 with the intentions of creating a stronger and more competent armed society. See, I've been teaching or leading in some way, shape, or form in the last 15, 20 years or so. I'm a married man and happily married. I have two kids, two wonderful kids. Love everything outdoors and love my job. It's a lot of fun. So yeah, that's a little bit about me.
Giddy up, thank you. So why firearms training? Why involve yourself in this at all? Or excuse me, why self-defense, right? So, we have both, talked about self-defense. We've talked about, living that life. What does that mean to you, and why is it so important? Why are we taking the time to talk to our radio listening audience today?
Okay. So I had a pretty big eye-opening experience after I got out of the Marine Corps, and I was wandering around aimlessly trying to figure out what I was going to do with myself. And I uncovered a pretty significant need for firearms training within the community. Essentially, there was the only thing that was out there was your random concealed carry classes, or you're open to the public gun ranges and that type of thing. So I thought it would be beneficial if we were beneficial to our communities if we would build a business that helped to guide people in the right direction, help provide some type of metric to hold themselves to, and that sort of thing. So self-defense is really important to me, and self-preservation, the ability to look out for myself and my own, and I think that's a right that I know that is a right that we all have. And we should be working towards and working on building up our skills in that. So yeah, that's
yeah, man. I completely agree with that. One of the reasons why I started down this path, many years ago was, I had an incident that shook me, right? So, young, dumb 19-year-old kid going down the interstate and see a car that's pulling on the side of the road. Lady looked like she was having an issue with her tire, so I pulled over to help. Right, at what any good citizen would do, right? That we would assume. And from that point, got out, tried to help this lady, ended up having a gun pointed to the back of my head. All my stuff stolen. Right, so truck gone, car key, like keys, wallet, flip phone at the time gone, nothing. So, from that incident, it was a kind of a surprise of maybe I need to look into, how to, some self-preservation skills, right? So went home, told my grandfather about what had happened. He said, "Here you go." It was an old Ruger P89, right? Just a big, monster of a hunk of metal, huge hunk of metal. And from that, I had that firearm, stuck it on the dash of my truck, and that was it, right? I knew how to defend myself. I had something to defend myself, and it lived there, right? So, I would take it off the dash and I'd stick it up underneath the seat or something like that. Again, you don't know what you don't know, and at that time, I was ignorant, all right? I didn't know like what I do now and how
Sure.
unsafe that actually was and what I was doing.
Well, I mean, if that were you, if you were in that position, giving yourself some advice later on, you would have likely started off with something more like, "Hey, man, let's talk a little bit more about situational awareness,
Absolutely.
and let's have some of these discussions about some of the dangers of stopping on the side of the road,
Yep.
to help people and discuss some of those things and how to get around that. Just different options, some less lethal tools or something like that might be a good idea."
Verbal judo,
yeah.
being able to use
Yeah, man.
use words, right? Or avoiding the altercation altogether, or
Right.
just avoiding altogether. There's so many things. Hindsight's 2020. Hindsight's always
Right.
2020. But unfortunately, with self defense, often that is hindsight's way too late. It's way too
Right.
after the fact. You need to do everything that you can to stay ahead of the curve, or before the curve, before anything happens. And if something were to happen or start to unfold, hopefully you'd have the mental presence, the skill, the mental fortitude to be able to handle that situation.
Right.
Um, through that entire journey, right? That's what really kicked everything off for me. And then I went from experience to experience to experience before I finally started getting training.
Right.
And I hope our listening audience understands. There are fun things to do out there, and there are fun things that you can do with firearms or with training. We're talking about like shooting out of helicopters and getting all like tacked out and feeling all cool and macho, versus what actual civilian here in the States training, firearms training, firearms self-defense training looks like. And again, like you said, it's not all guns and gadgets. Like there's so many other soft skills. There's so many other like I said, the verbal judo. There's how to use impact weapons effectively, how to use chemical weapons effectively, how to use yourself effectively, right?
Right.
Keeping your head up out of the sand and being aware. One of the things that, and we kind of joke about it or talk about it, go in Walmart, or go sit in a Walmart parking lot somewhere and park your car and just watch.
Right.
Right? Watch everything. Watch how many people have their heads buried in their phones as they're walking into a store. Watch how many people are watching other people do this exact same thing. It's a little alarming, right? A little unnerving.
Right.
So you're potentially watching somebody that could have malicious intent, or they could be doing the same thing you're doing, just people watching, waiting for a loved one that's in the store or whatever. Like you just don't know. And looking for those precursors, looking for those signs, there's just so much to that it's interesting, and it's something that we should really push forward and push towards teaching and educating our environment.
Yeah, for sure. I think looking back, and we find ourselves in the roles we have now within Apache, mentoring and guiding people through some of these contingency plans and that sort of thing. No more are the days of, hey, here's a gun, that's all you need. Here's that magic talisman, it'll fix everything. It's going to jump up and just come to life and save you all of a sudden.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
we don't have that anymore, or we don't have that with us, but it happens everywhere else around us. There's grandfathers and dads all over the world that are just, hey, this will fix everything.
Right. Yeah, I agree. Check what? When we come back from the break, we're going to take a break here in just a little bit. Let's talk about Apache Solutions. Let's talk about what it is, why it's here, what can it do for our listening audience. And we are back, ladies and gentlemen of the audience. Thank you for joining in with us for the Rack Show, where we talk about all things self-defense on the wonderful WSIC. In studio with me, Frank Horvath, and I have Tim Kelly here. We're about to talk about Apache Solutions, who they are, why Apache, why choose Apache, what can Apache do for the responsibly armed citizen. So, Tim, who is Apache? What Apache, and why do we care?
Sure. So Apache Solutions is a firearms training company based out of Yadkinville, North Carolina. We're structured a lot like a gym with a private trainer. So folks will come out and book a 1 hour private block of 1 hour block of private instruction or a 2 hour block, and our instructors will meet them where they are, help them establish goals, and then help them meet those goals along the way. You know, we have students that come out once a week, once a month, once every other week, just whatever fits their schedule the best. But it's not the same thing as going to a open to the public gun range, putting up a target on a piece of cardboard and then punching holes in it all day without any type of guidance. So it's a little bit more boutique. So a lot of our students that come out that come out and frequent the place, many of them will start off with already existing gear, already existing firearms and that type of thing, and then we just kind of like fine tune them along the way, find out what works for them and what fits, and they learn through experience, right? So
Right.
that guided instruction really helps point them in the right direction.
And that's one of the rude things. So total honesty. I am a part of Apache Solutions. I am the staff administrator for Apache Solutions, and I have 100% buy-in in Apache. I joined Apache 6 months or so after I had started as a student,
Yeah.
and then
Very early on.
and then like a bad ration, never left. But the really cool things that I've seen done at Apache is it's not all just die-hard guys out there wanting to be all gun tubers and all this cool stuff. It's families, right? It's individuals who need help. It's individuals who may have unfortunately gone through something, such as myself, that shook them a little bit, or some sort of family situation, a domestic situation. But like I said, it's families. It's moms and dads, parents who said, "Hey, we have guns in our homes,
Right.
and we want to help educate our children a little bit. We have, I've never had formal training. Maybe I'd like to get a little bit of formal training. So let's see what this is all about." Like, there's such a wide gambit of people and different experiences that is so attractive about training at Apache.
Well, before I started Apache, it was like I looked around for it. Like formal training or in this area at that time, unless it was hidden somewhere under a rock, I couldn't find it. There was no such thing as formal training. The closest thing you can get to that is a concealed carry class, and those are different across the board. Now everyone and their sister has a certificate to teach concealed carry in the state
Right.
of North Carolina. And it's everywhere, right? There's no place that existed for someone to go and say, listen, I went and bought this lucky rabbit's foot, and that's how I've been treating it for the last 5 or 10 years. But I just come to the realization I don't know what I'm doing with it. Right. Like I keep it in my glove box or something like that. And my buddy just got it stolen out of his truck, and I keep running through my mind, does that really make sense to keep it in the glove box? Like, am I actually going to be able to, access that under duress?
Right.
Is it realistic? People are asking themselves their questions, but most will live in a state of denial. Like they just think that it's just going to magically save them one day.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of these families that come out and attend our private sessions, they quickly realize, like, oh man, this is a lot more practical. Like, this is a lot more practical use for my firearm. It's not something that just lives in a sock drawer somewhere. It might actually be a viable tool, and it's not just going to magically work. Everything's not just going to magically work out. So that formal training thing just didn't exist. And so now families have that option. They can have this customized training and boutique options for them to grow in as a responsibly armed citizen.
Yeah, and you know, again, you touch on so many things just now that it's hard to pick and choose. But really focusing on those aspects, right? Focusing on what proper firearms etiquette is, focusing on what proper firearm safety is. There's so many things that's wrapped up in that people just take for granted, especially in our area. What's the thing that we hear all the time? Man, I grew up around guns. I've been raised on guns, right? Which 100%. Like I was exposed to firearms very, very young.
Mm-hmm.
But even with that exposure, being so young, and with that exposure of being around firearms and that training, being situation aware, knowing how to use a firearm under duress is huge.
Right.
Take a look at one of the things, again, I really enjoy the law. I really enjoy looking at self-defense incidences across the world, but especially across the United States. But there are so many incidences of good Samaritan, good guy being at the wrong place at the wrong time, and it not working out for Good Samaritan, right? Yeah. There wasn't good training that was in place. They had a preconceived notion of what it was going to look like, how things were going to unroll, and then you have the total opposite of, you have Good Samaritan who had proper training, who overcame the poor scenario, the poor situation that we're in, and and because there was a little bit of training there, because they understood what was going on, they had some practice. Case in point, take a look at the white settlement issue down in Texas. So we had a unhinged individual pull a firearm on some deacons and inside of a church. That unhinged individual, there was a gentleman who it was obvious he did not have good training. And unfortunately, he lost his life because of his actions and the way that he had,
wasn't able to read the cues.
Exactly, wasn't able to read the cues. And then we had another gentleman that was there who, did have some training, who was able to take effective hits to stop the threat,
right?
And very quickly, very calmly, and and all this happened in the course of literally 3 seconds.
Right.
I mean, it was like, scenario presented itself. Shots were fired to, the entire event being over literally in 3 seconds. And, 3 seconds can change your life.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, there's just so much that's involved in that. And people just, I wish I could just tell everybody, like, you just don't understand. Like, you have to, you have to be present. You have to understand that there's evil out there. And, we have to do our best to, to stay safe from that. Right.
Well, early on, you talked about like growing up around guns. Early on, I was talking about providing some type of metric for our community, and before we came around, specifically in Yadkin County, before we came around, there was no metric, there was no standard or anything like that people could actually hold themselves to. The closest thing that they could the closest thing that they could use is a concealed carry handgun permit.
Right.
But most will always fall back on, well, I grew up around guns. Well, that means something completely. I grew up around guns too, and so did you.
Yep.
But that means something completely different for you than it does to me.
Right.
Right. So your experiences growing up around guns are. I've had these conversations with you. They're completely different than mine. Right. They mean completely different things. So it's not a metric. It's not a standard. You ask any law enforcement officer, what their performance is like behind a handgun, and all you need is their score and the department that they work for, and you could Google their qualification, have a general idea of what they're capable of behind a handgun. With a concealed carry handgun permit, the qualifications are different across the state.
Absolutely.
And everybody teaches it differently across the state.
Yep.
And most of the time, let's be honest, it's nothing more than a sobriety test.
Right.
It's not a realistic, practical standard that they should be, using as a metric for success.
Yeah, it's a check in a box.
Right.
Right.
And through, our private sessions, in the last 6 years, we've got well over 5,000 hours of private sessions.
Yep.
We've used that as a laboratory to collect data along the way and build and develop those metrics. what is realistic for someone to be able to get educated on the subject matter, and you know get work on those different skills, and then evaluate their performance over time.
Right.
It's much like going to school. It's much like going to school.
And that's one of the things that I really enjoy about Apache is it's that dojo kind of feel. Like you can take somebody that has literally no experience to and work with them on what their goals and their objectives are, all the way from somebody who has a ton of experience and they just want to be a little faster, a little quicker, but they feel like they've plateaued. Like
Right.
it's literally the gambit. Um, we talked briefly about families. It's something that I hold very near and dear to my heart is working with kids.
Right.
Again, not every kid's the same. Not every kid is ready. There's a lot of things. You and the guardians of that kid, the parents of that kid, really need to help. Need to make that decision. Need to be intimately involved in that. But I'm not going to. I'm a father. I'm a father of three. There's no way that I can guarantee that my kids aren't going to be somewhere where they're going to be exposed to a firearm.
Yeah.
As a matter of fact, I know of somebody who walked into a bathroom not long ago and saw a firearm sitting in a public bathroom. Saw a firearm sitting on the very back of the stall, back of the toilet. How quickly could that have been a child? How quickly could that have been my child?
Right.
That was just exposed to that. Like, what do we do? How do we handle that? Like, there's so much that's involved in that. And educating our families, educating our kids, educating our community, again, very near and dear to our hearts. Very something that is extremely important.
Amen.
So again, talking about a little bit of Apache, we have something called 4 pillars, right? The 4 pillars that every responsibly armed citizen should know about. We're going to come up on a break soon, so I think as soon as we come back from the break, we're going to talk about those 4 pillars a little bit. We're going to talk about what those are. Tim, give us a quick preview. What are the 4 pillars?
So the 4 pillars are something that you need as a responsibly armed citizen, and they all revolve around quality training, quality gear, quality gunsmith, and quality representation.
Fantastic. Well, Tim, thanks for sticking around. Stay with us, guys. Stay with us, listening audience. You're listening to The Rack Show on WSIC. Welcome back to The Rack Show with your host, Frank Horvath and Tim Kelly. We are here with Apache Solutions. We're talking about all things self-defense. And our topic for next segment is the 4 pillars. So Tim gave you a little bit of a preview what the 4 pillars were. Tim, let's expand a little bit. So 4 pillars, all wrapped around quality. what's the first pillar? What are we talking about? Why is it important? Why does a responsibly armed citizen need to have these pillars?
Well, first of all, I mean, when we're talking about somebody needs something, we got to be careful about the word need. Like, if I tell you you need something, I'm not going to tell you, hey, you need a Glock handgun or
Right.
you need a SIG firearm or something like that. I'm not going to be stuck to some type of make or model or something along those lines. It's got to be based off of something that's practical and reasonable for their use, right? So if I say need, I really mean you need it. The first one's quality training, and we've just been talking about that all morning so far. So the quality training means you should be vetting your instructor. You should be vetting the company that you're taking training from, and you should be prioritizing practicality, right? So what is more practical for your everyday life, right? Not his everyday life or her everyday life, but what is more practical for you? And that's where you get the real education. I mean, if I have plans to be a doctor, right? I'm not going to go to school to be a carpenter, right? I mean, that's just because carpentry is fun, right? The same thing applies here. If you're going to carry a gun as a responsibly armed citizen, name a job, you're a mechanic or something like that, you really need to try to make that fit your everyday lifestyle. Now, there's different training that exists on all across the country. There's a lot of really good quality instructors. But if you're not a part of this community, having been in those shoes, you don't know that they actually exist.
Oh yeah, yeah. One of the things that I experienced. I experienced a lot of experiences, and I didn't experience a lot of like what quality training was. So like I thought I was training. That was the scary part, right?
Right.
I thought that I was doing the right things. I thought that I was learning from these Delta Force ex-military guys. But woe did I know that a lot of those experiences, I love our armed forces, right? Love our veterans, but a lot of those experiences that those teams, those guys bring back isn't applicable to civilians, right? We're not running as a team. We're running as an individual, or if we're lucky, we're running with a loved one, a spouse, somebody that has your back. Right. But there's a lot of really good instructors that are in our area. There's a lot of not so great instructors that are in the area. But how do you know? How do you vet? What are some questions that you can ask your instructors? What are some things that you can do to help vet those instructors and vet the training companies that you're getting training with?
Well, I mean, you just hit on one. I think one of the more common misconceptions is, well, you were in the Marine Corps, right, Tim? Yeah, I was in the Marine Corps. Okay, so then I'm in good hands here. Well, please don't just judge our company based off of my time spent in the military.
Right.
Only a small fraction of that actually transfers over to how we teach and how this business is ran. Conventional warfare and being a responsibly armed citizen are two completely different things. Those are two completely things that you gear up for. We're not talking about patrolling in Helmand province of Afghanistan. We're talking about going to the grocery store and downtown Statesville. That's what we're talking about.
Right.
And the stuff that you put in place to make it out on top is much different than what you would in a conventional warfare environment. So if you're trying to vet your instructors, don't just base it solely off of, oh, they were law enforcement or oh, they were military or something like that. Dig a little deeper, see what kind of ratings they've got. I mean, first off, if they've got a range master certified instructor rating of some sort, that's a really good key.
It's a good indicator.
Yeah, it's a good indicator that that you're falling into the right hands. But if all they've got is they spent time in the military, they were underwater scout sniper or something like that, that doesn't really apply to your basic pistol class. Right. It may sound cool and look fancy, but it doesn't apply.
Right.
So be careful when in that vetting process. The next thing is if you just happen to get into that class and you show up to that class and you get to the range, if it does not start off with some type of legitimate safety brief,
100%,
or and some type of emergency protocol where there are there are things set in place in the event of an emergency that, they can just unlock that and take care of business. If they don't have plans put in place, why are you trusting them with your life?
Right.
Why are you trusting them to plan or to help you plan for your experience out in town?
Yep.
If they're not prepared themselves. So that's a key indicator to just leave.
Yeah, one one of the things that I really enjoy, it's almost like a favorite pastime is, I'm a forever student. All right, I love learning. I love teaching. I love like learning the 1,000 different ways of saying the exact same thing. Something I'm really passionate about. So because of that, I take throughout the year I'll take 5 or 6 different concealed carry classes from different area instructors, and just sit in on a class. And I'll be honest, I've straight up walked out of some of these classes because the instructor was like, all right, we're going to shoot out here and we're going to shoot at this across this field at this target. I'm like, well, where's the berm? Like, where's our safety brief? Like, where's any of this? And it was literally non-existent. Yeah. So it's one of the things where I don't even ask for my money back. I'm like, all right, I'm out. Keep the money. You're going to need it. That's seriously like they're one lawsuit away from financial ruin, right. One negligent misuse of a firearm, and they're ruined. Sure. And again, and that's real. That's scary. So let's talk about quality instruction, quality instructors. What's our next pillar?
Quality gear. Man, I love guns. I love guns. I love all the gear. I love all the gear.
All the things.
All of the things.
All the toys.
It's great, and I get just as happy as any red-blooded American that walks into a gun store and sees all the guns and gear and stuff. But at the end of the day, if you are talking about gearing up for your everyday life, you've got to be careful about your gear selection.
Right.
Having worked in the manufacturing side of things for a short period of time, I know that there's a lot of snakes in the industry. There's a lot of people that are just out to get your money, and they really don't produce quality gear. A lot of them produce gimmicks. So you got to be careful about the quality that quality of handgun, the quality holsters, the quality of pepper spray.
Right.
These are all things that you really got to look into. And if you're inside the training community, there's a lot of great resources out there that exist. And if you've got a good trainer, they should be able to point you in the right direction of some of these some of these quality options.
Yeah, absolutely. One of the things that, again, thinking back on when I was first introduced to all of this, I thought I had great gear. I thought I had a quality firearm. I thought I had, a good holster. But woe did I know that I really didn't. There's reasons why good trainers don't allow certain types of gear, certain firearms. We'll go as far as say on the range. Some gear like nylon holsters, right? Those cheap like Uncle Mike's, they're great for holding a firearm, like maybe in a safe or something like that. That's about it. If you're using that to conceal carry, if you're using that to open carry, there's some issues there. The nylon holsters collapse. And what tends to happen when the nylon holster collapse? You have to use 2 fingers and try and fish it in, back in the holster, and it causes it's a failure point. It's a place where potential negligence can happen.
Right.
And again, if you're using this for concealed carry, if you're using this to defend your life, is it going to work when you need it to work? Is it going to perform when you need it to perform? We don't want it to fail. We don't want it to break when we don't expect it to. And I mean, let's face it. Things happen, right? That can happen with any kind of firearm, or any kind of gear. But taking time to put work into your equipment to make sure that it's sufficient, make sure that it's working, to make sure that you're comfortable with its use and it's functioning the way that it's supposed to function. That's ultimate.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that kind of brings us to our next pillar. We're talking about quality gear. It doesn't matter what you get into. If you get into it and you start using it over and over and over again, things are going to start to break.
Right.
And that's just the way it goes. So in the event you have gear start to break, you need to have a quality gunsmith. And I'm not talking about Uncle Joe in the backyard and in his backyard shed with a Dremel tool.
Right.
I'm talking about somebody who actually has a background in gunsmithing. They have experience, and they're not just going to cut your gun to pieces or Dremel it to pieces and
Right.
stuff just to make it look cool. They're going to be careful about what they put out there,
Right.
Because their name's attached to it.
Right.
That's the kind of gunsmith you want on your side.
And thinking about that, some names or a name that comes immediately to mind for me is Ryan Flynn of Aquila Custom Gunworks, right? He's up in East Bend, phenomenal gunsmith, has phenomenal work, teaches at Montgomery Community College in their gunsmithing program. Just a great overall gunsmith. Everything I've ever brought to him has always been flawless. Like, it's been so good. May have to wait a little bit for it, right? He's usually, because he's so good, he's a little bit backed up. He has a lot of work, but man, it is. I have no issues, no concerns in any way, shape, or form taking anything to him. Again, guys, find a quality gunsmith, somebody that if something happens, something breaks, they can fix it, and they'll do it right. Right. So we got one more pillar. What's that last pillar?
The last pillar is quality representation. I think this is probably the most often overlooked piece of the responsibly armed citizen, where people just rely on. I think it's just going to be a good shoot. If I have to draw my gun, I know that everything's just going to work out perfect. Well, you're not going to be able to just suggest that and rely on that. That's not realistic, right? You really need to have something in your back pocket to where you're not going to get hung up in the court system, spending out your lifetime of earnings trying to defend yourself in some forever lasting court case.
Right. And there's a number of quality companies that are out there. We've partnered up with USCCA.
Yep.
It's definitely something that we're going to have a much longer conversation about. One of our upcoming shows, we're going to bring somebody in on air with us as a guest. They're going to help talk with us a little bit about what quality representation actually looks like, and what some things that are out there. Well, ladies and gentlemen, if you're listening, thank you for listening to the Rack Show. We're going to take a break here in just a little bit. You're listening to the Rack Show on WSIC, where your news is now. We'll be right back. Thank you for listening. If you're joining us now, you're joining us for the Rack Show. There we go. I'm getting tongue-tied all over again. This is the Rack Show with your hosts, Frank Horvath and Tim Kelly, on the world-renowned WSIC, located here in Statesville. We are joining you from Studio B, one of the brand new studios that's at WSIC. We've been talking with you guys about a little bit about who we were, a little bit about who Apache Solutions is in Yadkinville, North Carolina. We talked a little bit about the four pillars of a responsibly armed citizen. And be sure, guys, we will be coming back to those in future shows. We'll begin talking about those a little bit more in depth as we continue. Now we're going to shift a little bit. We want to focus on different competencies, right? So every month we have something that we call the competency of the month. And it's really to help make a more well-rounded armed citizen, a responsibly armed citizen. So, Tim, what is our competency of the month?
So, competency of the month started off as an in-house like cadre development type thing for all of our all of the folks that are instructors and upcoming instructors
associated with Apache.
Yeah, right. Associated with Apache. It's meant to like encourage them to dive into the subject, better educate themselves, so they can better talk about it and articulate the competency itself. So this month's competency of the month is third-party altercations. So how to deal with it, should I deal with it, what are my options, what are the avenues, so on and so forth.
So let's back up a second.
Yeah.
What is a third-party altercation? Because that is a lot of words that seem like they're just strung together. So what does that mean?
Okay. So that means, I'm trying to break this down in best layman terms I possibly can.
Give me the baby speak.
So if you get involved in somebody else's drama.
Got it.
Right? You get involved. It doesn't matter if it's a family member. It doesn't matter if it's a friend or a stranger. But it's their business, not yours, and you get involved with it. You decide you're going to intervene for their safety. And there's a lot that can go wrong with that. And it's something that, I think it is commonly overlooked, where, that would never happen to me, or, I would just do this, or I would just do that.
It's easy to think that you're pre-gaming,
but
right?
It's one of the most difficult things to navigate.
Right.
It's one of the most difficult scenarios to navigate.
Right. So let's break that down a little bit. So, should you get involved in a third-party altercation? Are there, some key points to where it may be beneficial or not? Like, how do we know? How do we navigate that? How do we figure that out? For me, my answer to that would be it depends, mm-hmm. right? Because it always depends. It depends on my personal level of training. It depends on how I'm feeling that day. It depends on who's involved. Right. You can bet that if it is not somebody who I am intimately involved in, if it's not my family, pretty much. I mean that's pretty much it. If it's not my immediate family at that. I'm probably not going to get involved.
Right.
Again, situation dictates.
Mm-hmm.
But there's just too much at risk.
Right.
It's easy to say that you're going to be the good guy in the scenario. You're going to be the good Samaritan. You're going to be the one who comes in and saves the day. But is that your responsibility? And if it goes south, which it does, I would say greater than 2/3 of the time anyway, right? So for every 3 third-party altercations, two times out of the 3, it doesn't turn out well for the good Samaritan, the person who's intervening, right? It's only that third of the time where it does work out, and they're the ones that we hear about, the heroes. But there are way more examples of the latter, more, or excuse me, of the sooner, way more examples of it not turning out well, for the good Samaritan, the person who's involving himself into this third-party altercation.
For sure.
But
in the day of the active shooter, I mean that's
right.
something that unfortunately is a part of our reality right now. You hear a lot of folks that make up these plans in their head, and like they have this idea of how they're going to handle something like that should they ever come across. Oh, I carry a truck gun. Why? Is that your mission? Is that what you're going after? Do you have an end goal? And that's something we ask in a lot of our classes, especially like our AEDC class, the interactive concepts.
So what is that? What is AEDC?
AEDC is advancing everyday carry.
Okay.
So we have two different components to that. We have skill acquisition, where you focus on the technical skills that are involved, some of the more critical technical skills that are most likely to be involved in a self-defense application.
Okay.
And then the interactive concepts is more of a scenario immersion type thing. So where we actually really kind of get you in that mental headspace of really, what are you doing?
Right.
Like what are you planning for? Because most of us just like to, look at the gear and stuff like that. And some people look at it as a magic talisman. Some people look at it like, well, I'm geared up because I got a gun, I got pepper spray, or I've got this, I've got the tools, but you don't really know how or why to use it. And the third party altercations in some of the more immersed scenarios that we do, that tends to be one of the most difficult things for a student to navigate.
Right.
Should I get involved? So we start off that class with, what's your mission? Why are you doing this? Why are you carrying a gun to protect yourself? Why are you carrying tools in general to protect yourself? What are you willing to sacrifice? Who are you willing to sacrifice?
Right.
These are all questions that we should be asking ourselves as responsibly armed citizens, because if we don't have that already mapped out in our heads, we're going to have to make the decision right then and there in the moment.
Right.
And that is generally where emotions are involved.
Right.
And if we make our decisions based off of emotions, we're more likely to screw up and make a mistake. And if you're interested in finding out whether or not that's actual, like that's a problem for you, then get into some type of scenario-based training. Get in with us, or get in with ShivWorks.
Absolutely, yeah. Craig Douglas with ShivWorks.
Yeah.
Phenomenal.
Get in with that class. His ECQC class, extreme close quarters. Get into that class, and you'll see just what I'm talking about how making decisions based off of just pure emotions can really, really get you into a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
And I think where the third party thing is, like, give you just an example, right? You have no idea who the couple is, but you're a man, you stumble upon a man and a woman having some type of domestic dispute outside in the parking lot of a restaurant or something like that.
Right.
They're fighting, arguing, yelling, and pushing and stuff like that, and he hauls off and hit her. Are you going to get involved? How are you going to get involved?
Yeah, how? Right.
I mean, there's so many different options that you have. And, of course, none of us want to watch some innocent person get beat on,
right?
Especially if it's someone that can seriously overpower the other individual. We don't want to sit back and watch that, right? A lot of us would want to do something about it.
It feels like it goes against like every fiber of your being, right? Especially like as a man, like you're like, no, that's not going to happen.
Right.
Like I want to save the day. I want to fix this, but
but I don't know him. Right. I don't know his intents. I know he's pissed. I know he's mad. I know he's hitting her.
Right.
If I go over there, it is more likely that I'm going to escalate the problem to something greater than what it already is, and it's going to turn into a physical altercation between me and him, and maybe even me, him, and the girl. Right. I don't know what tools he has. I don't know if he's carrying a knife and he plans to use it. I don't know if he's got a gun in his back pocket. I don't know this guy.
Mental state.
Yeah,
right?
I don't know his mental state. I don't know if he's some type of criminal or something like that. I don't know his background.
Right.
So if I don't know, then and I go over there and intervene, I'm going to find out.
Right.
And if I have a mission to rely on. At the end of the day, if your mission is as simple as my mission is to make it home to my family, and I'm talking about just going to the grocery store or going to that restaurant, right? I went to the restaurant I had a beer with a friend or something like that,
right.
and now I'm going to go home, and I run into that problem. At the end of the day, my mission is to make it home to my family, to my wife and my 2 children. If I intervene, there is a probability that I won't meet my mission.
Right.
Right. So I have to weigh out those stakes and say, what other options do I have? Well, I could just call the cops.
Right.
You know, I could. I could intervene.
Right.
I could do something. Right. There's always different options. It doesn't mean you just have to be like, not my monkey, not my circus, I'm out. You know, you don't have to do that. But you have options.
Yeah, and again, your personal mission, your personal training, your personal skill set, your personal view on life will completely dictate that, right?
Right.
So for me and my family, like I am hyper focused on my family, right? It is my mission to go be a dad to my 3 kids, to be a father, be a husband to my wife, and so because of that, I'm going to look at things way differently than the 24, 26-year-old stud who doesn't have that, right? So I mean, again, we may have similar skill sets, way different points of view on life, way different points of view on like what our everyday it looks like,
right?
And what our mission set is, right? What our goals are. So yeah, 100%. Hey guys, we're coming up on the last 60 seconds. Tim, what's the key points, right? What do we need to know? What do we look forward to next?
Well, to summarize the third-party altercations thing, it get away from using the word "I'm a sheepdog," right?
Right.
Get rid of that. Get that out of your vocabulary and rethink the reason why you're carrying a gun. You're not nature's protector, right? You're not out there saving the day. So rethink that. What we got to look forward to moving up are more conversations like this, like what we've had. I'm really interested in hearing what our listeners and our viewers would like for us to discuss. But I think episode 2 has firearm safety and etiquette is something we were going to be diving pretty deep into.
All right, fantastic. Well, listeners, thank you for joining us for our inaugural showing of the Rack Show on WSIC. Join us every Saturday at 1 o'clock. We'll see you next week.